best options in Santa Fe. Ooh, that's a good one.
Isla del Sol is the legendary site of the Inca's creation. It's been credited as the birthplace of the sun itself. Both Inti and the primal Incas, Manco Capac and his sister spouse, Mama Huaca, originated here, as did the bearded white creator god Viracocha, who, like Quetzalcoatl of the Aztecs, became identified with the pale-faced conquistadors. Ever since, Christ and Mary have eclipsed the ancestral deities, replacing their sacrifices with redemption through the blood of crucifixion. Bolivia is a land of many contrasts. It has one of the highest Indian populations in the Americas, but most Indian peoples now in Bolivia originate from the high altiplano rather than the jungle floor. Many of Bolivia's high country Indians are on the poverty line and are frequently driven to seek a new life in the lowlands. Since the time of the conquistadors, Christianity has cast its shadow of the valley of death over the life of the people, offering the promise of paradise through the guilt of original sin and the human blood of redemption through the suffering and death of Christ. Investing authority in the powers of the day, particularly the Spanish elite, the cross and its pilgrimages fortification adorn both the towns and the high hills. Today, at a time when the tree of life is under genocide, Christianity still abhors contraception and reproductive choice, which places an ever-increasing human pressure on the forest wilderness. In the background, behind the personas of Christ, the Son of God, and Mother Mary, lie other older identities, such as Mama Kelia, the moon, and Pachamama, the earth goddess, and other aspects of native culture, which surface everywhere in traditional rites and celebrations. Lake Titicaca, one of the world's highest and greatest lakes, forms the Andes portal to Bolivia. Just to make sure you understand the nature of the situation, you are greeted by a sign to let you know that one man not only rules all, but is all. Banza is Bolivia. In 1999, from August to October, heightened by an exceptional dry season, probably triggered by climate change, 1,700 forest savanna fires raged through Bolivia, worsening the global warming problem and incinerating neighborhoods of several towns. This sequence shows huge smoke pools, sometimes extending across the entire southern Amazon regions. These NOAA satellite pictures show both the infrared hotspots and the visible smoke pools together. Brazil likewise had 1,300 fires spread through its tornado countries of Rondônia and Acre. The worst effect for the future humanity is the destruction of the great hotspots of biological and genetic diversity that surround the Amazon, the last and greatest forest on Earth. In many ways, Bolivia is the Tibet of the Americas. The high altiplano is a vast area of scintillating skies, mountains and small farmlets, yet the life of La Paz, sheltered in a precipitous, unstable ravine, is as far from this simple rural life as it is from the vast jungle areas of the tropical lowlands. This is the colonial centre of an elite and exclusively urban culture, despite the barrios with their urban poor lurching on every hillside. Nevertheless, there is still rare wildlife to be found in La Paz. In the witches or brujas market, among the money charms and the love amulets, are llama fetuses richly adorned to grace the foundations of new houses. We can also find, under pain of the photographer's curse, skins illegally stripped from ocelots to become power animals. In La Paz, we investigate Bolivian ecology and plan our journey into the lowlands.
Just recapping, if we can get the ideal situation, what would be ideal? What we'd really like would be, okay, tomorrow rest day, next day up to Catapara?
El Castillo is
Castillo? Back to La Paz. Yeah. We're looking at then do the round trip.
Well, we want to make sure that Teresa's happy to come with us. We're now traversing the ridge of the Andes to explore the steep hillsides of the Yungas. Here we are crossing the highest point of the pass. The redeeming figure of Christ is near present, as we see in this folk shrine at the summit. The descent is precipitous, interlaced with hairpin bends and peerless vistas. On every corner are daubed apocalyptic warnings: Cristo viene pronto, Christ is coming soon. We emerge from the alpine tundra to forest-clad precipices, the most notorious road in South America, descending 10,000 feet in about 70 kilometers to Coroico. The minibus driver is cutting the edge because he knows I'm filming. At every turn, 1,000-foot precipices. Later we found his outer had punctured. High across the valley are the tailings of gold mining workings, polluting even the steepest slopes. There are also several fires clearing even steeper slopes for crops. Coroico is a sleepy hill town at the centre of Bolivia's traditional and legal area for production of the best coca leaf. Along with coffee and fruits such as bananas, coca is an essential and ancient crop. But everywhere, the forested hillsides are denuded by fires and clearing. We travelled to a remote spot at Castillo in a side valley to experience the wildlife of the Yungas. This is a small area of transitional forest identified as an ecological reserve. It is home to rare orchids and many unique species, flowers and birds. Although this is wild and inaccessible country, everywhere we turn, there is burning, clearing and colonisation, even on the steepest and most isolated slopes. Although each of these fires and clearings are small, they are everywhere. There are people, and over time, they denude the hillsides and leave them semi-permanently arid and infertile. High up the hillside, on a nature walk, we came to this burnt-out area in the wilderness. Many of these plots are for arum lilies for city funerals. They themselves form a funeral rite for the wildflowers of the Yungas. After returning to La Paz, we set out for Cochabamba to make a circuit of the tropical forest lowlands of Bolivia and to experience the burning season which had devastated so much of the lowlands and several towns during the month of August. Our journey is accompanied by the commentary of the Bolivian ecofeminist ecologist Teresa Flores.
In the region of Chapare, There is huge deforestation because of coca growers. When they eradicate the coca crops, they move on and they plant again and again, and more land is deforested.
We came upon many logging trucks apparently sporting illegal mahogany. The driver of this truck tried to prevent us from filming and took our license plates.
Okay, go. Good.
This forested pass was one of the few relatively undisturbed transitional zones we found on the highway going east. Both the high country and the jungle flats having already been extensively cleared. Almost immediately we had our first taste of lowland fires among the flame trees and hanging nests of the beautiful gold-tailed oro pendulo. This small town shows some of the variety of tropical produce being grown, particularly many species of banana and papayas. Urcapina is a maverick centre of illegal coca production. You can see here coca leaf on sale on the main street, as it is in every town market in Bolivia. We then drove north to stay overnight at Villa Turnari and visited Carrasco National Park. You can see here monkeys and green parakeets. Loros. Although we did get a glimpse of tropical jungle and see some local fauna, park resources were minimal and there were continuing signs of clandestine logging operations.
They wait at night and they pass the controls. They pay a bribe and they can extract illegal timber. The man who was sitting on the back of the truck, he said that he was taking the trees, clearing the forest for Samuel Guiteras. Samuel Guiteras is the brother of the president of the Bolivian Senate.
Yeah.
And you see there how are the connections of large landowners and politicians.
When we reached Montero in the afternoon, the sky was hanging heavy with smoke, so that the sun set deep red into the smoke before the actual sunset. As we travelled north from Montero in the night, there were many distant fires on the horizon, some of them very large and far off. What is significant is the sheer number of such fires. At night the moon was not white, but deep ruddy red as in an eclipse. Again the sun at sunrise was colour the smoke. You can see the effects of huge agribusiness development.
This dry tropical forest has better soils, therefore it's used by agribusiness. Huge extensions of this forest are gone forever because the soil is very sandy, and after a few years it becomes like desert. With bulldozers you can clean the forest in a very fast way, which is impossible for poor peasants or Indians who live in this forest. You need a lot of capital to deforest extensive regions. The project Lowlands, which deforested about 2 million hectares, was possible only because loans of international credit institutions. It was not possible with only Bolivian financial resources. They can do that because there is demand of certain products. in the international markets, and therefore there is a pressure to extract, to use resources, particularly soil, in the fastest as possible way.
These forgotten areas, often along the banks of small rivers, are one of the few places we saw nature in a relatively undisturbed state. This small community with its church, its cross, and the proverbial cowboy typify the wild east of Bolivia.
No, I think we go that way, but tell me if I'm wrong.
We have enough
Fuel? Petrol? I think so, yeah.
In this town we were offered wild game for lunch, which they said was armadillo. Wherever you find devastation and burning, there's likely to be a relatively new hacienda home nearby. There's something tragic about these beautiful flowering trees that burst out of the burnt forest. It's like the forest is trying to bear forth beauty in a situation where beauty is being destroyed forever.
There.
This is the first of the Hacienda Infernos. What's amazing about these fires is there's never anyone there. A deserted landscape with fires burning. No one to stop them, no one cares. There are literally hundreds of logging firms. The number of these timber firms is so huge that they can literally deforest huge areas of the Amazon. Logging trucks operating everywhere with native hardwood. You can see there's a great variety of species involved in these logs. The sun glowing in the smoke. Here we have the tree of life. What are you doing?
I'm doing it.
This is Ascension. Very tiny monkey, very rare, extremely small. There's another larger one captive. It's one of the ways you can actually experience wildlife is the different animals. You can see here how small this monkey is. The animals that people bring in, captured. Here are burnt out areas of Ascension. There were 49 houses destroyed. Here we have the civil emergency tents housing an entire suburb. Many of the people came running up to us and tried to explain about how the Hacienda fires had just come burning right into town.
can be bad. I was too worried but
We came upon this huge conflagration just burning beside the road. There's nobody here. The whole side of the road's on fire. Trees burning. Nobody here. Now we have a scene of real devastation. There's this one standing tree. I ran onto the property. I could hear the chainsaws. They're cutting down the one remaining stately tree in the whole area. This looks like it could be settlers, but it might be the beginning of some bigger development. I run forward filming. They're busy cutting the tree down. I turn around a little bit. Look at this kind of sight. It's an absolute scene of devastation. Everything's torn out by the roots, burnt off. There's one house in the middle. It's like a war zone, a disaster zone. Now in the middle of this filming, somebody sees that I'm there. They start running, screaming. They all come chasing out to the road, desperately trying to take notes of who we are, and they probably would try to get a hit squad out to get us just for taking the photographs. You can see here how populations become vulnerable as habitat is destroyed. There's a very large colony here of herons. You can see here again fires in the distance as we drive in the night. We're coming towards Trinidad. This one even further in the distance and larger. This is Trinidad. It's the capital of the Bolivian Amazon province. It's kind of an island of civilization with rapidly disappearing wilderness in all directions around it. This ecotourism hotel also houses an important environmental centre for Beni.
See the Beni, it's the regional center of documentation of Beni issues. And they mainly focus on environmental and forestry, indigenous people issues, and they document all this. It's the only one here in the region, that's why it's very important for the Amazon issues. They organize many activities, and this was a rainforest exhibition, for instance. a national seminar on forestry for birds conservation. This is petrol exploitation on forests.
We mostly are working on indigenous territories
Right.
and forestry management plans. This is for a community.
Right.
We are working the communities to use their forests in a sustainable way. They are very careful about
Yeah.
what trees to cut, and this is
Yeah.
a very careful plan.
Right. Do you think the Bolivian government at this stage do you feel they are respecting this process?
No, there is a lot of conflicts actually in these areas, in this
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
Conflicts with ranchers, with oil companies. In
Yeah.
some cases, they have big oil companies in this area.
Ah.
Bloque Secure, Bloque Chapare are here.
Right.
Covers almost all the territory, the oil concessions
Right.
in the Isidoro Secure.
Are they
And
already?
they have problems also with colonies. This area is plenty of colonies.
Yeah.
Thousands of colonies of coca growers
Yes.
are right here. So they have problems with them too. We are still in the process of enduring
Yeah.
law,
Yeah.
and it's really very, very hard.
Strange thing about this environmental hotel was that you actually drive your car right into it. Here we're coming out again, out the main doors. Very good.
Mamma mala.
Here's another branch of the river. There's three we crossed. We're now travelling east of Trinidad through the savannas and in hope of seeing some concentrations of wildlife that are very exceptional here. These are kind of regions that are of paradise. There's intense concentrations of wildlife, and the savanna and the forest mix to make this absolutely beautiful landscape that's very much like Eden. The primordial garden.
They're good, aren't they?
This is the fabled Tuyuyu coming into land. It's a huge stork.
Can I have a look through the zoo?
Here we have capybaras.
There's a bird right in the middle of them.
Oh, little group of birds flew off.
Cayman.
There you guys. Got it?
Yeah. Have I what? There they are. Very nicely feeding.
Now we're starting to come to a region where we began to see infernos in action again. You see these little islands of tropical jungle here that permeate the savannas. They're very fragile. In the distance, everywhere, fire. Fire's burnt to the edge of the road here. You can see the ring of fire like all prairie fires have. You can see here the smoke plumes rising high from more distant fires. Now everything that was green has become black, as far as the eye can see. You can see the fires, there's a massive number of fires further ahead.
Yeah, we'll have to stop in a second. Keep driving until we get the fires under the sun.
There's bloody fire everywhere, we're surrounded. The Diablo tree is a tree of death because it contains fire ants, and when you bang the tree, the fire ants rush out and bite you. We reached San Ignacio by nightfall. In the midst of all this paradise and inferno, we find Catholicism, as always, living its sentimental reality, quite untouched by the tree of life or the threat to the future of life, which the destruction of biodiversity tolls. But the true destiny of those who wait as stewards of the unveiling is to fulfill the reflowering of the life tree, hidden since the foundation of the world.
Oh, oh, oh.
vision in all peoples I speak this prophecy. This is the Maranatha. My name is Jesus. I am Mary's son. I am coming home. My mother, the moon, is dark. Brother Quetzalcoatl, hold back the wild hot sun. Bind him with shadow while I pass. Let me come home. But I am the Lord of two ways. I am the master of up and down. I am as a man who is a new man, with new limbs and life, and the light of the morning star in his eyes. Lo, I am I, the Lord of both ways. Thou wert Lord of one way, now it leads thee to the sleep. Farewell. D.H. Lawrence, The Plumed Serpent. This is a very nice little hotel courtyard that was in the main square of San Ignacio, where we stayed the night. Once again, San Ignacio was burnt. Suburbs were burnt by raging hacienda fires. You can see again here the same green civil emergency tents and the burnt out properties.
Rio de Janeiro, I went to the El Summit and then
We're beginning to enter Holocaust country here. These are areas of tropical forest that interpenetrated the savannas, which have been cleared and felled, often for pasture, for cattle ranching, not for the productive crops that one would hope. These forests are very vulnerable, and they're the richest part of the land has grown into forest. The savanna is poorer, but it's very sensitive and it's being hit very hard here. Everywhere we went, there's this clearing. Here's a small patch of undisturbed jungle that we can just get a feel here and there for what this tropical forest is like.
Okay.
The parrot family, loros. We've seen red macaws and yellow macaws as we've travelled through the Alps. With the arrival of humanity, most of the monkeys disappear into the furthest deep forest because monkeys are very good meat. So they tend to be slaughtered wholesale when colonisation occurs.
That's really good. That's neat.
This is a beautiful nectar-eating bird that illustrates just how fragile the way habitat destruction spills over and destroys many species besides the trees. How can these species of flower-eating birds survive if there are no trees to produce the flowers? Dust to dust and ashes to ashes. This is the worst. Stretches as far as the eye can see.
Parts of Beni, they are deforesting, particularly for agriculture and cattle ranching. Although there should be not necessary because we have there savannas where you can cattle without the need of deforestation. It's completely without so stupid, without any logic what they are doing, because what we have seen is huge, immense areas of forest destruction that has no explanation. That's only such a human stupidity and ignorance that it's unbelievable.
As we came to the Andes in the morning, we came to the Biosphere Reserve in Indigenous Territory, Peon Lajas. As we arrived, we saw columns of smoke coming right out of the national park. And as we began to drive up the slopes, you could see that each of these was a separate, intentionally set fire. These absolutely sparkling views of over the foothills of the Andes as we first climbed up are our one sense of redeeming hope that there's at least some of the forest of Bolivia and of the greater Amazon left, and that there's still time to save some of it. We have moved east to the Pantanal of Brazil, an even larger area of savannas, forest islands and swamps. This is Picone at the north end of the Transpantanera, the gateway to some of the richest concentrations of animal and bird wildlife in South America. Here we have again the white heron. Here again, a grey heron. This one carefully watching a lurking caiman. Caiman are everywhere. Here is their humping sex call. The savannas and their forest islands are again here subject to the impact of haciendas and clearing. The wildlife reserve is only as wide as the road and its side ponds, although it is a major Brazilian eco-tourist attraction. We see many new species as well as ones we have seen in the Amazon and Bolivia, such as the herons, tayuyu and capybaras. Here we finally have the man-sized stork with grey feathers, I presume Manshaku. As well as the tayuyu standing before the burnt undergrowth. The forest here has been decimated by fire. Again here we find wildfires set to clear the vegetation. As we drove north again, we came to this huge inferno pressing onto a region of forest vegetation, much too large to contain. Yet this pattern of destruction happens every season across vast areas of Brazil, as we shall see in Rondônia on our way to Rio. Palm trees which resist fire are the signature of tropical jungle cleared for farming. You can see here the bare trunks of tropical forest burned to make pasture. These landscapes have earned Rondônia the title of Los Tornados, the tornado country. Many areas of cleared land are not viable and fall back into wasteland. You can see here the remains of a major fire in the river wetlands, leaving the whole area devastated. On both sides. Although Greenpeace had received an email from workers in Brazil claiming there was a moratorium on agricultural fires at the time we passed through, the entire region hung heavy with smoke, and traffic had to use headlights in the day. Once again we have large-scale agribusiness development, as we saw in Bolivia. The highway is again littered with hundreds of logging firms in every town we passed. Brazil holds 80% of the Amazon, so its actions are critical to the Amazon's future. Just as I was producing this work, interest groups tried to finesse through the Brazilian Congress to expropriate in one step half the remaining Amazon for development. This was only narrowly averted by an international deluge of emails. I'm choosing this place behind the statue of Jesus in Rio because it's a small piece of park, and in fact the whole of this area is a national park, but it's a very small piece of the last remaining jungle that used to grace the area around Rio. There's about 120 square kilometres left. The rest of it's all been cleared. Now I'm coming here to Rio to pronounce something about the millennium, and it's about the destruction of biodiversity in the Amazon and its preservation. I come on this vigil to Rio because the Rio Biodiversity Convention happened in 1992. And we all know that all those good promises of Rio have essentially been abandoned, that the rate of clearing of rainforest in the Amazon basin has increased by perhaps 30%. The last burning season in Bolivia was an atrocious example, just as the fires in Sumatra in 1997 and 1998 with El Nino were atrocious, of absolutely wanton destruction, promoted by many factors, promoted by national governments to make rapid gains, because of corruption, promoted by transnational corporations, promoted by the World Bank, who are trying to amend their track record, but their track record is atrocious, promoted by large hacienda owners who managed to get large swathes of land by owning cattle, in final turn promoted by small-scale settlers that don't know any better because of the examples that are set. Massive destruction of hellfire throughout the great hotspots of genetic diversity on this planet. Now, the religious tradition stands accountable, particularly Christianity and the Judaic tradition, for assuming dominion over nature in the very Genesis, and assuming dominion in the Eden story by the sweat of our brow to conquer nature, in a failure of engagement, in a confrontation with the natural, in which woman was cursed, the snake was cursed, nature was cursed, and by a sweat of our brow we set to dominate nature. Now that has been an excuse ever since for civilization to dominate nature in the name of religion. What we find now, looking back on this whole epoch, is that it is really a stream of consciousness account of the fall of humanity in patriarchal urban civilization from integration and attunement with nature. And we now stand as the dawning of cosmic humanity, looking at ourselves in the universe, and this is the real apocalypse. This is the unveiling of our true nature as cosmological entities biologically in space-time. The aim of Jesus' mission was to bring about the return of the tree of life, and that was the sense in which he was trying to undo the original mistake that people perceived had been made in Eden. Now, the mistake that was made in Eden was to forsake the continuity of immortal life, and the prophecy at the end of the Bible is the return of the tree of life, which is things hidden since the foundation of the world. The tree of life was hidden and withdrawn by God, lest we have both immortal life and knowledge. Now, to care for the planet and cosmological time, we need now to have the tree of life back. And there's a phenomenal contrast between the destruction of the Amazon by fire, by what is inferno, and the destruction of all the great forests of the world, by logging, by fire, by chainsaw, by bulldozer. But particularly by fire, because inferno is the word for hell. And paradise is couched in terms, in every artistic representation of the diversity of all the animals, Adam naming the animals, the diversity of animals and plants, and the creation of the cosmos and its diversity. And we stand responsible in cosmic time. Shortly after Jesus was crucified, there were over 1 million people reputedly killed in the siege of Jerusalem, and there was a diaspora of Israel. So there's a real sense in which the end of days that was prophesied in the apocalyptic sense by the Jewish apocalyptists actually did come about. But the mission of Jesus and the timing of the mission stands very temporary in human political terms by comparison with the sort of crisis that we are perpetrating upon the world in evolutionary time through the destruction of biodiversity and through genetic engineering our food plants. And the damage that is now being done in the Amazon, and the potential damage that will be done if companies like Monsanto are allowed to engineer the food plants that are grown across the vast productive areas of the planet and not protect the natural diversity of our food plants, is absolutely huge and will be a detriment and a famine to humanity, which could last 50 million years, at least 10 million years, We are facing a situation that between a third and two-thirds of our genetic diversity will be lost. Now, you cannot regain that ever.
Una bella lebranza con Cristo completo.
Thank you.